Hello, welcome to the Royal Rota, your weekly podcast from ITV on all things royal, where you can watch us on YouTube or you can listen to us on your favourite podcast platform. And I think it will be a serious podcast this week for what is a very serious week of royal news.
Very serious and a big week in royal land, I would say. Lots for us to talk about.
Yeah, of course, Martin Bashir being the key one, and the report into the Diana interview in 1995. We'll spend a lot of time on that. It's a big, chunky report. In fact, I've got it here, if you can see it, from Lord Dyson. So I just thwack it on the desk. It needs a thwack, doesn't it?
It's going to go everywhere.
Ready? That's better.
Very good.
Right. So whether you're listening or watching, you could have or should have heard that.
Yes, it's quite a beefy report. We had to quickly get through it yesterday, didn't we?
Yes.
Before we did various interviews in reaction for it and edited it for bulletins.
That and Harry on mental health, of course, and talking to Oprah again. Williams has started a few days in Scotland. Do you want to do your list?
I was going to say, I was reading my list and I was
in danger of doing your list.
You're in danger.
Anyway, lots to talk about today. So let's get Robinson's royal rundown as we do. Which, if you're new to this podcast, it's where Lizzie Robinson goes through her royal news in a rundown format.
Well explained. So at the top of the list, obviously, is the Dyson inquiry into Princess Diana's 1995 interview with Martin Bashir. We had the full report from that yesterday. Prince Harry has spoken very candidly in a new mental health documentary series with Oprah Winfrey. We had some lovely baby news this week. The Queen is going to have a 12th great-grandchild. It was the wedding anniversary of Harry and Meghan. Prince William had the first dose of the COVID vaccination.
Yep.
Charles and Camilla have been in Northern Ireland for a couple of days on a visit. A new initiative called the Queen's Green Canopy was launched, and William has just started a week-long visit to Scotland, where he'll be joined by the Duchess of Cambridge on Monday.
Okay, right. There's only one place to start, isn't it? Yeah. And we have lots of news to bring you from this weighty document. Now, it said 127 at the bottom of my page here, 127 pages long, as well as all the annexes and all the rest of it. A recap, this is the report that the BBC asked an independent chap, a judge, can't call him a chap, can I? A retired judge, Lord Dyson. He was a former Master of the Rolls, very senior position in the judiciary, but asked him to look in detail at all these allegations about what happened in 1995, how it was that Martin Bashir secured the interview, was there any deceit, were there lies told, was there a cover-up at the BBC? And on all those points, we have to say, Lord Dyson said, yes, there was deceit. Yes, there were lies, and yes, the BBC did try and cover this up when they looked into it in 1996. Yeah,
he did use deceitful behaviour to secure the interview and was in serious breach, that's a quote from the report, of the BBC's guidelines to secure that interview. And
but
the BBC,
woefully inadequate there.
Yeah, the report said the BBC fell short of the high standards of integrity and transparency which are its hallmark.
No, you don't just turn to us on this podcast to find out exactly what's being going on. You also turn to us to find out exactly how we cover it. And we'll just tell you a little story before we get into the detail of the report, is that we were outside the BBC, which for us is a very odd place to be, I have to say. Isn't it outside the BBC television centre, or what's it called now, New Broadcasting
House? That was my first time ever inside New Broadcasting House. Yes, we
felt
were there.
like we were in enemy territory.
In enemy territory, crossing enemy lines.
Right, and the reason we were there is because the Director General of the BBC, if you don't know, that's the kind of chief executive position, the most senior management position in the BBC, was giving a couple of interviews yesterday. He gave one to his own organisation, the BBC. He gave one to us here at ITV, and we will play that interview in due course. But we were there to interview him, Tim Davie, about this report. But just to give you some background, this This was released at 2 o'clock, and our interview was at 2:40.
2:40.
So we spent the time, we didn't even have a printout in them. We spent the time on the phone sort of going through, just trying to find out exactly what Lord Dyson found. But I mean, as ever, there's a trick with these things, is to go to the executive summary, which we did, and it's there where you find a lot of the stuff, isn't it, about... Essentially, well, let's run you through. I mean, Martin Bashir was accused and now has been found guilty of, and admits himself that he did it, mocked up some bank statements, forged bank statements, made fake bank statements, however you want to refer to it, to try and show that a member of Earl Spencer's staff, that's Diana's brother, had been receiving payments from News International, at the time the owner of The Sun, The News of the World, and The Times, I think, wasn't it, News International, that he was receiving payments. In other words, to try and show to Earl Spencer that one of his staff was leaking stories to the newspapers and being paid for it. The reason he did that was to get a meeting with Earl Spencer, which Earl Spencer's told us he had on the 31st of August. It, significantly, as he pointed out himself, didn't he? That was exactly 2 years before the death of his sister.
Yep, and in that executive summary that you just mentioned, it said that Martin Bashir, deceived and induced, I think was the word, Earl Spencer to get to Princess Diana, to get to that interview, and played on her paranoia.
So where should we start with this? Shall we start with, I mean, there's many places we could go, and you're probably aware that Prince William made quite a significant statement to camera. In fact, Lizzie was there as he made it, and she'll tell you about that in due course. Where should we start with this? We start with Tim Davie. Should we start? Tell you what, or Earl Spencer. There's plenty of places we could take. Should we start with our interview with Tim Davie? We sat down and spoke to him, as we've just explained to you, and asked him about the findings of this report, or whether he thought there was any criminality involved, what would happen now at the BBC, and what would happen, crucially, to the members of staff who tried to raise this issue with the BBC in 95-96 and were effectively told they had to leave the programme. So this is our interview with Tim Davie. Princess Diana's brother, Charles Spencer, has said that you can draw a line from the interview in 1995 all the way to her death in 1997. Not that the BBC caused the crash, but it triggered a series of events which led to her being without Metropolitan Police security in a car in Paris with a drunk driver at the wheel. That is a hugely damaging accusation.
Well, we're deeply apologetic. When we look at
that you can draw a line between 95 and her death in 97?
I can only be driven by what is in the Dyson report and the evidence I have in front of me. That clearly demonstrates major BBC failings, which, I think it is a dark day for the BBC. Beyond that, I think I cannot speculate.
You accept that it triggered a series of events, like the divorce, like the fact she lost her security?
I can't accept anything that I don't see evidence for. I've seen full evidence for the BBC's failings and what we've seen in the Dyson report that I commissioned to get to the truth 25 years ago in terms of what's happened with this interview. Anything beyond that is speculation, so I just can't comment on it. I think it's a difficult day for the BBC. It's a dark day for the BBC. I mean, we pride ourselves on truth, impartiality, and the quality of our journalism. That is absolutely what we stand for. And 25 years ago, we fell way short of our own standards at the time, let alone the standards that we've now set for ourselves. We've improved our processes. But I have to say, reading that report, it's a difficult read.
And you heard me there ask Tim Davie about this accusation, and I think probably one of the most serious accusations, isn't it? That you can draw a line from 1995 interview to death in 1997. Not that the BBC caused the crash, but as you just heard me ask Tim Davie, and that's something that Earl Spencer himself told the BBC, ironically, in a Panorama programme looking into the Panorama problem, wasn't it?
Yes, told the BBC about the BBC to the BBC.
Yeah.
That aired last night after the report had come out, and he said that he felt that you could draw a link between that 1995 interview with his sister and her death in 1997, and that's a link. And what he means by that is the events that interview triggered in the kind of in that period between the interview and her death, and he means things like the subsequent divorce and her losing her security.
Well, the irony is that I met Martin Bashir on the 31st of August 1995, because exactly 2 years later she died. And I do draw a line between the two events. It's quite clear from the introduction that I sat in on the 19th September 1995, everyone was going to be made untrustworthy. And I think that Diana did lose trust in really key people. This is a young girl in her mid-30s who has lived this extraordinarily turbulent and difficult time in the public eye. She didn't know who to trust, and in the end, when she died 2 years later, she was without any form of real protection.
Now, as you'd expect, we spoke to some of those people who were involved in the making of that programme or who worked for Panorama at the time. One of them is a chap called Mark Killick. He was a senior producer on Panorama. And he spoke to us for the very first time. In fact, he's never spoken before, has he, to anyone about this. And there was a couple of key points that I thought he raised to us. One is, did the cover-up by the BBC encourage or discourage, I suppose is the right word, people from coming forward with problems? You know, can you not speak truth to power was his accusation.
This culture of fear, I think.
Culture of fear.
It, yeah.
And also he referred to this Dyson report, to the Martin Bashir events, as the BBC's equivalent of phone hacking. It's their phone hacking moment, he said. Yeah,
very serious words from Mark Killick, who, for the first time since this interview happened, he was a producer at Panorama at the time. He wasn't working on the interview, but he was one of the very first people to raise the alarm when he had a call from Matt Wiesler, who was the graphic designer, saying there's a problem here. He and various others flagged that to management, and he says we're told, be quiet, your loyalty lies.
He told us he saw the bank statements and he knew there was something wrong with them, instinctively knew there was something wrong, that these bank statements didn't look right, and therefore he went to management about it. And then, as he told us, and as you'll hear, within 24 hours of raising that as a concern, he was told by the editor of Panorama he was no longer welcome to work for the programme.
When I got these documents, I knew they weren't right. I didn't know what they'd been used for, though, and it was important to be proportionate. I went to a BBC lawyer who said these have to be referred up. I went to Martin Bashir and he didn't have an answer for me. I talked to some colleagues and collectively we went into BBC management and said, these documents exist, we don't know what they've been used for, but they don't look right to us. And within 24 hours of that, I was told I would be leaving the programme. It seems to me this is the BBC's phone hacking moment. With phone hacking, the issue was how the story was obtained, not the story itself, and it's the same here. What's interesting is the BBC decided to shoot the messengers, run a smear campaign, and then cover up the story. Rupert Murdoch, to his credit, closed the News of the World. And it's a strange day when the News of the World, Rupert Murdoch ethics actually trump those of the licence fee-funded BBC.
Now, Lizzie mentioned a guy called Matt Wiesler, who was the graphic designer, the guy who was asked by Martin Bashir to fake these bank statements so he could show them to Earl Spencer, so that Martin Bashir could get a meeting with Earl Spencer, which led to the meeting with Princess Diana. And we brought you an interview that he did some time ago, but he's been speaking again, hasn't he?
Yeah, he spoke to us today, so the day after the report came out, and I think he feels he lost his job in the wake of this, and he says that what he wants now is not only an apology directly to him. He says the apology that he's got at the moment is a sort of a generic apology that has gone out to lots of people that were involved, and what he wants is a proper apology directly to him.
The reason he wants that is because Lord Hall, who was at the time the Director of News and later went on to become the Director General, the big boss, basically wrote in a report in 1996 that Matt Wiesler wouldn't be, that we will ensure that he won't work for us again. In other words, he says, and he's always maintained he was made a scapegoat.
And we'll play you his clip in a minute, but it is Lord Hall specifically, rather than the BBC generically, that he wants an apology from. And talking of apologies, we also know that apologies have been received by the Duke of Cambridge, the Duke of Sussex, Clarence House and Buckingham Palace, and Earl Spencer.
I just think what I've been waiting for all this time is a much more friendly and personal touch, because what they did to me was really aggressive. And you can't just tick boxes and say, well, we owe that guy an apology, so knock off that email to him and we'll have done our job. Their job is much more complicated than that, because my life was turned upside down. I sort of have righted it, but you know, my family have felt it. Everybody that knows me has felt it. I have changed as a person. You know, this has got to be addressed. It would just be really nice for me to be able to sit down for half an hour with the current Director General and have a completely frank discussion about how you treat the small guy who isn't the star but is hardworking. There must be a process that's more dignified and decent.
So what do former employees do about it? So another person we spoke to, Tom Mangold, quite a well-known Panorama reporter or BBC reporter, and basically they want, or they will consider now, their options by taking a legal route, by which I suppose we have to presume is they'll consider suing the BBC for their loss of earnings.
Yeah, and we know from our conversation with Mark Killick, Tom's colleague at the time, that he too is consulting with his lawyers at the moment. So they're kind of working out next steps and what to do.
I think the four of us involved, one was sacked on the spot, another one was told to get off Panorama immediately, a third one was warned heavily that his career was in trouble, and I was eventually sacked on the spot by the next editor. I think the four of us are going to have a very good look at what happened, and we may possibly take matters further. We haven't decided yet.
Would that involve taking a legal route and suing the BBC?
I can't answer whether we're going to sue the BBC or not. It's not in our minds at the moment, but I think we'll take advice on all this and we'll think very carefully about it. It was a very unpleasant period. The press kept writing about these troublemakers and jealous colleagues, and it was a very hurtful time for me and for my other innocent colleagues. So we'll see what happens. But I think Dyson is a good start.
So we have now set out the case. That was the report. We have brought you the reactions from those involved.
It's staggering, really, isn't it? 25 years ago,
nearly,
26 years ago, that this interview took place, and that we are at this point only now that this has been found out. That's a really long time for the families and also the employees that were there at the time to have waited all that time to get to this point.
And for Diana's sons.
And for Diana's sons.
Both of whom have now spoken about it. So this, actually, should we just explain how this happened? So Prince William decided that he would give a statement. The statement was given to one of our cameras that, as you know how these things work, on the rota system. We share that with the BBC and Sky. You were there at Kensington Palace to record it. I mean, it's not for you to sort of say exactly what happened, but he was you couldn't describe him as angry, but definitely a very serious.
Yeah, so we filmed the statement. It was me and a camera crew from ITV News. We went, and as you say, we filmed it for the broadcast pool, so it was shared with everybody, and we filmed it in the courtyard at Kensington Palace. And I would say, yeah, he delivered it in a very composed and measured way, but I think when you read it, you can really feel, and when I heard it, you know, the power of that statement is extraordinary, and that feeling that he has. And I think delivering it on camera rather than just a written statement made it even more powerful, and made sure that the impact and how widespread it would be, you know, the fact it's going to be delivered absolutely everywhere, and it got real attention.
Did you know, I mean, slightly off topic though, but I always say to people, it is much more powerful when they do these things on camera than when they just issue a written statement.
Looking straight down the camera, you could feel it from him, and being there and hearing those words. know what to expect until he started speaking. I mean, it was
Exactly.
it was an
We
extraordinary
weren't told in
moment.
advance what he would say. And in fact, a lot of the newspapers were on deadline, as they call it, which means they were about to go to print, and they didn't know what he was going to say either. So it all happened very late on Thursday evening. We thought we'd play the whole thing. It's worth listening to the whole thing. And the accusations William makes against the BBC, against Martin Bashir, who he refers to as a rogue reporter, but also a sort of a wider issue about why the freedom of the press is important and why people should be able to investigate the truth. So this is what Prince William said on Thursday evening.
I would like to thank Lord Dyson and his team for the report. It is welcome that the BBC accepts Lord Dyson's findings in full, which are extremely concerning. That BBC employees lied and used fake documents to obtain the interview with my mother, made lurid and false claims about the royal family, which played on her fears and fueled paranoia, displayed woeful incompetence when investigating complaints and concerns about the programme, and were evasive in their reporting to the media and covered up what they knew from their internal investigation. It is my view that the deceitful way the interview was obtained substantially influenced what my mother said. The interview was a major contribution to making my parents' relationship worse and has since hurt countless others. It brings indescribable sadness to know that the BBC's failures contributed significantly to her fear, paranoia, and isolation that I remember from those final years with her. But what saddens me most is that if the BBC had properly investigated the complaints and concerns first raised in 1995, my mother would have known that she had been deceived. She was failed not just by a rogue reporter, but by leaders at the BBC who looked the other way rather than asking the tough questions. It is my firm view that this Panorama programme holds no legitimacy and should never be aired again. It effectively established a false narrative which for over a quarter of a century has been commercialised by the BBC and others. This settled narrative now needs to be addressed by the BBC and anyone else who has written or intends to write about these events. In an era of fake news, public service broadcasting and a free press have never been more important. These failings, identified by investigative journalists, not only let my mother down and my family down, they let the public down too.
It was that line, wasn't it, about the indescribable sadness, about her fear, paranoia, isolation that he remembers from those final years with her.
Yeah, and I think that was a point that all the newspapers picked up on, really, wasn't it, about the way in which it ruins the final few years of his mother's life. Maybe that's my word, ruin, but basically affected the final few years that he had with his mother.
And what saddens him the most is that she didn't know. She never knew that she was going to be deceived.
And she died knowing that she'd been deceived. So Prince Harry issued a statement. His wasn't on camera. It was worded. Lizzie, do you want to read all of it or most of it, or?
I can read you. I'll read you bits of it.
Yeah,
the main bits. Our mother was an incredible woman who dedicated her life to service. She was resilient, brave, and unquestionably honest. The ripple effect of a culture of exploitation and unethical practices ultimately took her life. I'm then going to jump to the final paragraph where he says, our mother lost her life because of this and nothing has changed. He's talking about sort of wider practices. By protecting her legacy, we protect everyone and uphold the dignity with which she lived her life. Let's remember who she was and what she stood for.
So we shouldn't be surprised that Harry, he's had an issue with the press more widely. We know that. That's been, well articulated, and the fight that Meghan has had in the law courts with the Mail on Sunday. We shouldn't be surprised that he holds elements of the press responsible, and in this case that includes the BBC because of what they did in this particular instance.
Deeply personal statements from both of them, really, I thought.
Yeah. So where does he go from here? Well, the Prime Minister's been talking about the BBC. Some politicians have jumped on it as well. It becomes very much a sort of a media story about where the BBC takes this. Why did they rehire Martin Bashir as their religion correspondent in 2016? But there aren't actually many people at the BBC who are still there. Martin Bashir left We told you that last week in the podcast, didn't we? Or I can't remember.
I don't think we did actually. I think that happened on Friday. But yes,
Right.
he has stepped down on health grounds.
Yep.
And while we're talking about Martin Bashir, we should include his response to the findings. He apologised, saying the faking of bank statements was an action he deeply regretted. But he added he felt it had no bearing whatsoever on the personal choice by Princess Diana to take part in the interview. So he is standing by the fact that what he did, he's acknowledged that what he did with the bank statements was wrong, but he says that that played no part in her decision to do the interview.
And I think that, therein lies a reasonably important point in that Princess Diana probably would have done an interview. In fact, Lord Dyson finds that in his report, doesn't he? He said Princess Diana probably would have done an interview and was looking for someone with whom to do that interview. So this we come back to the point, this wasn't about the fact that she did an interview, it's that she did it believing that certain things had happened, like people were being paid to spy on her, like people were being paid to leak stories about her, like some of the other stuff that if you look at Lord Spencer's notes, which are included in the annex of one of the reports here, about all the things that Martin Bashir told him about the Queen's health, or all this kind of stuff, which William referred to, didn't he, in his statement, as he called it, the lies about the royal family, the lurid claims he referred to them as.
Yeah, so I was having a chat earlier today with one of Diana's very close friends, Dr. James Colthurst, and Dr. Colthurst was the friend that did the interviews with her for the Andrew Morton book. So he used to go, ask the questions, record them, and then take the recordings over to Andrew Morton to write up. And he was saying to me that, the things that Diana was saying, she'd talked openly about how she felt for that book, but her character hadn't changed. She was still the same person that he recognised. But during that period where she met Bashir, had done the interview and was sort of around him, he said that the change in her was so noticeable to him and their friends. And I think that goes back to your point about, what she said, or, there was truth in what she said, of course. It was just the way that interview was gained.
Context around it as well. And Earl Spencer said as well, he noticed a change in his sister. He noticed that she was becoming much more paranoid, much more looking over her shoulder, worrying about things, thinking that everyone was against her, convinced that the system, the state was against her. She might have had those paranoias beforehand, but they were being fuelled by what she was being told by Martin Bashir.
Yeah, being played on is essentially what Earl Spencer.
Yeah, and that's what the judge found. There's another point here, the way that William says it made his parents' relationship worse. Now, everybody knows that the state of Charles and Diana's marriage in 1995 was not in a good place at all. But interesting to hear William's assessment that he thought it made it even worse than it was kind of shares the opinion of his uncle, Earl Spencer, that if it made the marriage worse, that probably made the divorce worse, that probably made the consequences afterwards worse. And that's why Charles Spencer says you can draw the line from 1995 interview to 1997 crash in Paris.
Yeah, it's extraordinarily devastating, that as a claim, and as is this report, frankly, for the BBC. I think, going back to the interview with Tim Davie, a dark and difficult day for the BBC yesterday. I think that's...
as you said, a dark day, as he told me, but a day that got even darker by the end of it, given what William said. And actually, we'll show you the front pages. Here's a little montage I put on my social media on Thursday night of Friday's front pages, every single one of them basically writing a version of William's fury at the way in which the Panorama interview, made his mother's life much worse towards the end.
And, the statement wasn't one line, was it? No. It was a very, very carefully thought out, thorough statement that, what an impact it had last night, I think.
Indeed.
It was incredibly strong.
So and again, if you want to see any of those interviews, were there any pictures that we spoke about that you haven't? Actually, there was one picture. We should probably show it, shouldn't we? It was a picture that that Earl Spencer shared of him and Diana when they were very small. I don't know their ages, but they look about sort of 2 or 3 to me. And what was it he said next to it? Some bonds go back a very long way. Yeah. And he put that out before the report was released, kind of kind of letting everybody know that he was doing this to look out for his sister. He feels like he owes it to his sister.
That's what he's always said, hasn't it? That he's pursuing this because, you know, he owes it to her and he wants to do that in her memory.
Exactly. And to finish the sentence, I was...
Sorry.
No, it wasn't you. I got myself distracted. Was that I was saying that if you want to see any of this, go to our Instagram, which is at ITV News Royals. The William video is on there, as well as some of those other pictures that we just spoke about. Or on Twitter, at ChrisITV for me, and for you.
At Lizzie ITV.
Right, should we pick up this big port like this and ceremonially put it to one side?
Yes, I think we might need to keep
we'll
hold
keep
of it though, because
I'm just gonna put it down there.
it feels to me like that's not going away.
It feels like it belongs down there for now. At least I can sort of mentally feel like that's been dealt with. There's another not a small issue, which is Prince Harry talking to Oprah Winfrey. Now you might think to yourself, I've heard Prince Harry speak to Oprah Winfrey before. You have, and that was the interview they did for CBS. However, Apple TV started their series. This is the series that Prince Harry had in the offing for a long time.
Right back when he was a working royal.
Yes.
Think that. I mean, how much has happened since then?
Yeah, didn't Oprah go around to Frogmore to kind of just sign the deal? I believe.
So.
And yes, so that was when he was a working royal. So this is how long they've been working on it. But we're not making light of any of the issues, of course, because actually what he's talking about is a very serious point, which is mental health. He goes into a great deal of detail about his own mental health struggles. Probably in more detail, would you agree, than he did when he spoke to Oprah, or Meghan and him spoke to Oprah back in, March? I think it was March, wasn't it?
Yes, I'd say that, you know, he really opens up some of those issues that he touched on. He kind of expands on those in The Me You Can't See, which is on Apple TV, and he's in conversation with Oprah, talking about, you know, his own mental health. And I think, you know, I imagine he probably feels that by talking so openly about his own mental health, it will help other people. And, you know, highlighting that as an issue is a very good thing. And opening that conversation can only be, you know, praised, because there's some really difficult issues in there for him to talk about. And if that helps other people with their mental health, then that is a, you know, very applaudable thing.
So let's listen to a bit of Harry. I mean, not only talking about his mental health in general terms, but actually speaking about it very specifically, about his mental health and his memories as well of his mother, and why he needed therapy to help him deal with that.
So 4 years ago, only after meeting Meg, did you start the process of trying to figure it out? You hadn't tried it before? No.
And I quickly established that if this relationship was going to work, that I was going to have to deal with my past, because there was anger there, and it wasn't anger at her, it was just anger, and she recognized it, she saw it. Well, so how do I fix this? And it was a case of, you need to go back to the past, go back to the point of trauma, deal with it, process it, and then move forward.
And in the course of the Apple TV series, and actually they've I don't know, do you call it a series dump? Is that an actual word, where they put the whole series on all in one go, so you don't have to wait for them to come out each week, but the whole lot is on Apple TV. And if you have a look at some of these pictures, it's actually Harry allowing the cameras in to film some of the therapy that he himself was having, for example. That's a whole new departure, a whole new process of allowing cameras into a very private part of his life, which is something that he's decided clearly to do. And
the therapy actually that he was having there was something called EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing sessions.
Right, which is for people who suffered from PTSD.
Yeah, a sort of a post-traumatic stress disorder. So you see him having that and talking openly about that. He talks about how he's been in having therapy for about 4 years, and how, you know, Meghan has very much helped him with that process.
And that his family hasn't, kind of thing. But we've kind of heard that before in the previous Oprah interview. Let's just have a listen to what he said about his mother and the memories of his mother. And what pains me is when he said it was when he first thinks about her, he thinks of actually her in distress being chased by cameras in a car.
Unfortunately, when I think about my mum, the first thing that comes to mind is always the same one over and over again. Strapped in the car, seatbelt across, with my brother in the car as well. and my mother driving, being chased by 3, 4, 5 mopeds with paparazzi on, and then she was almost unable to drive because of the tears.
And there was another clip that he spoke about his father again. Now, obviously, when he spoke to Oprah last time, which is kind of for me, now we don't know when this was recorded, but it kind of for me suggests that one of the relationships that he needs to heal is not just the one with his brother, it is the one with his father, because this is in the second documentary. He's sort of said, I've got a lot of my mother in me, didn't he? That was one of the things he said.
Yeah.
But also that his dad had kind of said, oh, this is just how it is, son, get on with it, just deal with it. I had to deal with it when I was your age.
My father used to say to me when I was younger, he used to say to both William and I, well, it was like that for me, so it's going to be like that for you. That doesn't make sense. Just because you've suffered doesn't mean that your kids have to suffer. In fact, quite the opposite. If you've suffered, do everything you can to make sure that whatever negative experiences you had, you can make right for your kids.
And again, we've got him saying in the public domain and choosing to say that his father had let him down, effectively.
And this follows that podcast, the armchair expert he did, I think about a week ago with Dax Shepard, where he's talking about needing to break the cycle of genetic pain. And he said that he'd experienced some form of pain or suffering because of the pain or suffering perhaps my father or parents suffered.
Yes, exactly.
So that's
he was criticising his father's parenting and also really the Queen's parenting of Prince Charles as well.
So that's, he's been incredibly publicly critical.
Which does leave him open to the charge that he's invading his own privacy now, because he's talking about family relationships and failings of his own parents in the public domain when he doesn't have to do that.
Yeah, I think, what I said earlier about talking about mental health in the public domain, is he feeling he has to address this issue because that's part of his mental health story?
But he's doing it in the public domain. He
agree.
could address this issue privately with a therapist, is what I'm saying. So,
and you have to wonder how, if the relationship with his father is so fragile, which what he's saying suggests it is, how dealing with it so publicly, how he can ever repair that.
Yeah.
Surely they have to take that offline and deal with that.
And this is it.
Privately.
It's not offline. That's twice now. It's been very much online. Well, 3 times. Yes, the podcast, Oprah, and Oprah 1 and Oprah 2, we'll call it.
And the podcast.
Yes. So Oprah 1 and Oprah 2 and the podcast. Yes. So as for more of Oprah 2, so we've mentioned what he said about his mother, we've mentioned what he said about his father, we've mentioned about the sort of therapy that he says he's been getting as well, but also an admission from him that he spent a lot of his time, particularly at weekends, just drinking and taking drugs. I wasn't quite sure whether he meant recreational drugs or medical
I was willing
drugs.
to drink, I was willing to take drugs, I was trying to
it's
do
unclear,
the
isn't it? Somebody asked me earlier, did he admit to taking recreational drugs, or
just says drugs?
Okay,
yeah.
well, they're his words, they're not ours. So drinking and taking drugs, as he said it, and have a listen yourselves to get through, to sort of forget.
Stop feeling what he was feeling.
Yeah.
He wanted to kind of shut it out.
I was willing to drink, I was willing to take drugs, probably drink a week's worth in one day on a Friday or a Saturday night.
And of course, I suppose Harry would not, well, it goes without saying, he would not be able to do any of this if he was still in the royal family.
He talked about mental health in the royal family through, we heard him talk about his own mental health, but, we have heard an awful lot from Prince Harry over the last few months, Those
just 2 months really, 8 weeks. He's got a lot out
and
there.
you have to wonder, and that's the departure, I guess, that he probably feels able to talk much more openly when he wants.
And do we think Harry will just keep doing this now, or do we think this is him just saying, okay, look, I've moved, got a new life, we've done the Oprah interview, Oprah 1, we've now done Oprah 2, I've done a podcast. I suppose every time I hear, I thought when they did Oprah, that's it, they wouldn't say any more. And then the podcast came along where he criticised his father's parenting. Actually, he also where he said, what did he call it? The First Amendment bizarre or something? Bonkers.
Oh, that's had
that had a very negative reaction in America, because the First Amendment, anyone who's in America will know this much better than me, but anyone who's not in America will know that it protects the rights to freedom of speech, to freedom of assembly, to freedom of the press. And Harry was a bit negative about it, shall we say, in that podcast. That didn't go down particularly well, not with some commentators in any case. I wonder, is this the point where they now go quiet, or is this just the new normal?
Well, they've still got these big deals with Netflix and Spotify, and
there's only been one Spotify podcast.
There's only been the festive special. They're still going to expect content from Harry and Meghan, and even if that's in a producing capacity, I suspect they'll be on screen at some point.
Well, actually, Oprah on Good Morning America was speaking about how Harry was a producer on this show, and that he turned up. He always took the notes. He said he was always on the Zoom meetings before me. He beat me to them every time. She said, basically saying, she was saying how committed he was to the project, so behind the scenes, not just front of camera.
I mean, he's obviously got this amazing platform because of who he is, to be able to speak and to be able to shine a light on it. But I suppose how much currency does that have when it's so frequent? Yeah. There's more value if it's rare to hear from somebody. So I don't know if they will keep going. It feels at the moment, yes.
Well, two chunky discussions on two very chunky subjects. We probably should rattle through the sort of the remainder of the royal news of the week, and talk about those. So what do you want to do next?
Should we do some happy news for the Queen?
Baby news.
Baby news, royal baby news.
There's a new baby, number 12. Okay, I'm going to see. No, should we do the naming ceremony?
Okay.
Well, Princess Anne's oldest child, Peter Phillips, has 2 children, and then Zara Phillips has 3 children, so there's 5. William and Kate have 3 children.
I know that you're not doing the names, but I don't think we've got time.
Harry's got 1 child, Archie, so that's 9, but he's going to have another one soon, so that's 10. Mm-hmm. And then Eugenie's already got 1, August, who's 11. So there we go, Beatrice and Eduardo Mapelli Mozzi, her husband, is number 12.
Number 12. So Princess Beatrice is already stepmom to Edo's son Wolfie, but lovely news that they're going to have a baby in the autumn, and the Queen and both families are said to be delighted, of course.
And just a translation, if you're in America, the autumn here is what you call the fall. So, new baby in the fall.
But also some very sad news for the Queen this week.
Dog. Puppy.
Lost her Dorgie.
2 Dorgies. Dorgies are Corgi, Dachshund cross.
I think one was
Queen had...
So she's got Candy, which is her older Dorgie, and then she had 2 puppies, one of which was a Dorgie and one was a Corgi.
Right.
But Fergus has sadly died.
And he was just a little pup. And she only had them bought for her when the Duke of Edinburgh
was in hospital. Yeah. So they're not very old.
Sad for the Queen. We know how much she likes
puppies. She's still got Mick, who's now on his own. But
Muick.
Spelt Muick, after Loch Mick at Balmoral, which is
Loch Mick in Balmoral. The Queen's continued to do audiences this week. We had another email this morning about a couple of audiences as well. So she's getting on with that part of the job.
She's back to work,
We can't say actually what she's doing. That she's doing something, and I've now started the conversation. So we can't tell you something that I was going to tell you. So I'll stop right there. Next.
Talking of Scotland and Balmoral and Loch Mick, Kate and William are going to be in Scotland over the coming week.
Okay, so again, this is something we knew about last week, didn't we? But we couldn't tell you. But there's now been a press release saying that they're going to be in Scotland because, so let's explain this. The Queen has appointed him the Lord High Commissioner for the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland. Is that right?
Correct, yes.
Really? Did I get that right?
I think so, yes.
Okay, and there's something that she appoints every year, someone different.
Yep.
And other members of her children, members of her family.
Members of her family.
But anyway, it's Will's turn this week.
So there's a series of sort of
events. You can't tell them all,
events that will see them. I think
some of them, but not all of them. Is that right?
There'll be an Edinburgh, Fife and Orkney across the week. William is there on his own until Monday when he's joined by the Duchess, and then they will join up together and do a series of engagements.
Some of which we're very excited about, but we still can't tell you about it. But one we can tell you about is that they are going to go back to the university where they met.
St Andrews. Yes, that'll be a nice visit, won't it?
This podcast is really hard when you know stuff.
Yeah, I think we're going to move off this.
So I think actually before we tell you about an engagement we're not allowed to tell you about, we'll probably just move on. But William and Kate are in Scotland, quite a big nation in the UK, up in the north part.
We'll have a big Scotland slab next week.
Yes, tell you all about that next week when we know we can tell you about things. Next on your list.
Charles and Camilla, Northern Ireland.
So this is another nation in the UK. So there are 4 nations in the UK, just in case you weren't aware. England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. You know, there are some viewers in America who get confused about why you call the UK and Great Britain and England and Scotland. Anyway, there we go. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
There we are. Well, they've been there for 2 days.
They were in Northern Ireland, yes.
I thought they looked. We sadly went with them. We were still here, but I thought they looked.
We weren't with them. I thought you said we went with them.
We weren't
with them.
No.
We definitely
we
weren't.
definitely weren't with them. I thought they looked on really, really good form. There were some really great pictures of them both doing a whole series of engagements. But one of the lovely pictures from the couple of days there was Prince Charles's visit to Harland and Wolff, which...
A famous shipyard in Belfast.
Famous shipyard, and it's got the iconic cranes, two
I should know this, but they built Titanic there, didn't they?
They built Titanic there.
Yes.
And
it's called the Titanic Quarter, I believe, in Belfast.
Yes, I think we've been. But the Duke of Edinburgh was there almost.
1977, Silver Jubilee
The
year.
Silver Jubilee tour.
So spot these two pictures. In fact, this is my Twitter feed, or I can't remember if it's Instagram, but I put sort of half and half picture up. So this is the sort of pictures, one in 1977 of Prince Philip and one in 2021 of Prince Charles at Harland and Wolff.
Yeah, and he was there, he met some of the employees, but one of those employees had been there for his father's visit in 1977. So that was really nice, and nice that he kind of recreated the picture.
Quite remarkable that someone's kept a shipyard job for that long as well, to be fair.
Yeah, incredible.
Given what's happening to shipbuilding in that time.
And they did one of our favourite things to go and do when we were on Prince Charles and Camilla visits.
Don't tell me that's go to a food market.
Yes, they did. They did. So it looked really fun. And
that's on the what we call sort of Charles and Camilla bingo, isn't it? When you have to sort of tick off all the things.
What's on
there's normally a sort of sustainable market round table for Prince Charles and
often a food market for both
a
of them.
food market for both of them. Whereas we've told you before in this podcast, Camilla will do the eating, but Prince Charles will only do the smelling.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
And there were some elbow pumps with members of the public, but they looked on great form. Looked like they were having a really nice time. So I think they're just delighted not to be on a Zoom call, frankly.
Yes, delighted not to actually have to be involved in either the Lord Dyson report or any other big news. And actually, the weather in the UK is quite rubbish at the moment. It might be the end of May. It might be very close to the summer, but actually, it's pretty awful.
That's an understatement. It's horrific out there.
Yes. Anything else on your list? Because I've put my list is buried inside Lord Dyson's
One
report
more very important thing, and that is the Queen's Green Canopy.
Okay, right. So we need to tell you about the Queen's Green Canopy. Let's then have a look at some pictures of the Queen and Prince Charles planting a tree. Now, they do this all the time. Have a look at this.
The Queen, in fact, has planted 1,500 trees across the world.
I think it's 15,000 or 100?
1,500. 1,500.
Okay, so they planted another tree. This was that picture that you just saw there is Windsor Castle, where they planted this oak tree. Now, okay, I need to tell you a couple of things here. So the Queen's Green Canopy is about planting as many trees as possible, perhaps millions of trees, for the Queen's Jubilee, the Platinum Jubilee, next year. But you can't plant your trees yet. You have to plant them in the planting season for trees, which is October to March. So the pictures you just saw were taken in March. We only got them this week, but the actual tree planting happened in March. And if you're going to plant the tree for the Jubilee, don't do it until at least October.
Yeah, so you've got a period now to get you've got your ducks in a row, ready for your tree planting in October.
So they've done the launch now.
Yep.
Looking back to a tree planting scheme in March, so that you can plant your trees in October.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
So the Prince of Wales, who is patron of the Queen's Green Canopy, he planted the first Jubilee tree.
Yes. There's some video of Prince Charles, isn't there? We should probably play a bit of that.
There's some video of them doing a little bit of planting.
No, video of him speaking.
And video of him speaking and saying, plant a tree for the Jubilee, the Treebilee, as he calls it.
I didn't think that was a very good joke. And I think if I had been a communications officer at the palace, I would have said, you know, sir, I don't think you should put that one in.
No, I
Treebilee.
I quite liked it.
Did you like it?
Yeah.
Treebilee. And do you want to hear him say it? So this is Prince Charles speaking in a video message to launch the Queen's Green Canopy. Not planet, because that was another thing, wasn't it?
Whole other
Canopy.
thing.
Anyway, plant a tree for the Jubilee or the Treebilee.
As patron of the Queen's Green Canopy, I'm delighted to launch this unique tree planting initiative created to mark Her Majesty's Platinum Jubilee in 2022. As you know, forests are amongst the richest biological areas on Earth. Tropical or temperate, they offer a magnificent variety of habitats for plants, animals, and microorganisms. They release oxygen, generate rainfall, aid natural flood management, filter pollution from the air, regulate temperatures in urban areas, prevent soil erosion, mitigate the effects of climate change, and enhance our well-being. Quite simply, we cannot live without them. Whether you are an individual hoping to plant a single sapling in your garden, a school or community group planting a tree, a council, charity or business intending to plant a whole avenue of trees, or a farmer looking to create new hedgerows, everyone across the country can get involved. In March, during the most recent planting season, I was delighted to have an opportunity to plant a tree with Her Majesty in the grounds of Windsor Castle to launch this very special initiative. There is a reason for this profoundly symbolic act. Planting a tree is a statement of hope and faith in the future. As we approach this most special year, I invite you all to join me to plant a tree for the Jubilee. In other words, a tree-belee.
So the Woodland Trust will be, I think they said something like 30 million trees or saplings they've got for you to plant there, where you can do that as an individual, as a scout group, a guide group, an organisation, a business. Anyway, stick some trees in the ground is the message.
But
do it in October.
The key message is to do it in the right time, in the right place.
And the right tree as well.
And the
Don't
right type of
go
tree.
planting any non-native trees, because that's also quite bad.
It is.
Right.
It is. So
there we go. The public service message done. Big week, lots to talk about.
Yeah.
I think we've done your list.
I think we've done the list.
You'll probably you probably stopped listening about half an hour ago. So if you're still listening to this podcast
well
now,
done.
Congratulations or well done. If you tell us if you got this far through the podcast on social media, we will send you a medal in the post, because I think you really do deserve
We're
one.
going to be sad when no one's like, yeah, we did.
I don't think anyone's going to get this far. They're going to say, no, we actually switched off a long time ago. So to all of you not listening, see you next week. And thank you very much for those who did listen for part way through.